Exploring theology, doctrine, and all of the fascinating subjects in between, broadcasting from an undisclosed location, Dead Men Walking starts
now.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dead Men Walking podcast. Thanks for coming along on the ride. We appreciate you guys. Been looking at a lot of comments online right now on our Facebook, Twitter. Yes, we're back on Twitter. Well, not back. We just got on Twitter about 6 months ago. Appreciate all the follows there. And checking us out at dmwpodcast.com, where you can learn a little more about us, listen to the back catalog. Heck, leave us a comment or a voicemail, or even visit the merch store. You can get one of these nifty mugs right above my head here that says Wine 'em, Dine 'em, Romans 9 'em, you know? Little conversation starter. We are giving away, you're listening to this right now, in a few days, we'll be giving away a St. Nicholas Punching Heretics Christmas Edition t-shirt. So look on our Facebook and Twitter and Instagram for that, where we're going to be running a contest for our special Christmas episode that goes live on the 22nd. But enough of the selfless and shameless self-promotion. We have a good friend here in studio. I attend church with him. He's a brother in the Lord, and we're going to be talking about some fun stuff, but we're going to do something a little different here, too. Well, first, Randy Meyers, how are you, sir?
Yeah, just great.
Official introduction, Randy Meyers.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah, and this is just going to be a conversation between friends, but we're going to do it with a twist. We're going to do a beer review as well while we go through this. First ever on Dead Men Walking podcast. Now, I've had some people on, and we did a little private beer review after the camera stopped rolling.
Sure.
Believe me. But I know you're a home brewer, and you like your craft beers. And I said, I think it'd be interesting to expose the listeners to some of the stuff that maybe we sip on around the holidays for the glory of God, and make it a holiday themed. And I think when we get into these, a lot of these might be kind of Midwest beers.
Right,
I think if
right,
people are listening.
But at least one of them that I brought is available to everybody.
Okay. Yeah, I know I have two Michigans and an Ohio in there, and we joke, we say coming to you from an undisclosed location. We've been doing this 2.5 years. Everyone knows where the heck I'm at.
Yeah. I got
no secret.
Two Ohios and one Chicago, but that Chicago beer is all over.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. So tell us a little bit about yourself. First of all, give us a couple-minute intro. Let people know what you're about.
All right, so I'm a high school math teacher by trade.
Okay. So my worst enemy when I was 17.
So I never thought I'd be a teacher. I thought I was going to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
It's funny, I researched some of these old theologians, and they thought they were going to be a lawyer, and they ended up being a pastor. I ended up being a high school math teacher.
Okay.
I consider being a pastor. That was after I graduated from college in 1980. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I considered Peace Corps, ministry, maybe go back and get a advanced degree in communication. My degree is in interpersonal communication.
Okay.
But I started out college as a math major, thinking that I was allowed to study math and go to law school. But I seemed like I really didn't want to be a lawyer. And then when I got out of college, or at least my 4-year degree, I was advised to get a master's in business. So I went to BG to get an MBA, and then I became a college dropout. I was DJing at night and nightclubs and trying to figure it all out.
Yeah.
So I dropped out of school. I ended up, but then got right back to school. Decided to be a high school teacher. I thought I'd be a high school speech teacher.
Okay.
And then ended up, nobody told me that it's really good if you're comprehensive English. So it's hard to get a job as just a speech teacher.
Right.
And nobody told me that. And I already had all these math classes, so I was certified. So I thought, well, I like math, and I just want to be a teacher. I like to teach.
Yeah.
So which fits, I like to teach from the Word of God.
Yeah.
And I think a good teacher can teach anything, right, if they learn a little bit about the subject.
Sure.
And I think I'm a capable teacher.
Yeah.
And so I've been blessed to be around other good teachers who have mentored me. Bob Forney comes to mind, and today was his funeral.
Yeah.
Just was tough for me. He was probably my most important mentor. So I loved Bob. And it's people like Bob and others that really challenged me to be a thorough scholar.
Yeah.
And so, and then somewhere mid 80s, somebody asked me about the sovereignty of God, and it really changed my life. It's like all of a sudden I thought, wow, and Romans 9, that's why I love that wine and dine 'em in Romans 9. Romans 9 really changed my life.
Yeah.
It really did. But I've had experience, not just teaching, but I was, elder, and we were without a pastor, and I was preaching 3 out of 4 Sundays, and I've done a lot of preaching, a lot of pulpit supply. I did some teaching at pastors' conferences in Peru, so I've been to Peru 3 times
Wow.
on missions trips, and I was chairman of some Bible conferences in the 90s where we had James Boyce and Michael Horton and Ravi Zacharias, who knew, and then Bruce Metzger, Alistair Begg, some good folk,
good guys.
Yeah,
for the most part. Yeah.
So I've been studying and thinking, and for.
So how long since the Lord saved you?
Happened in the 70s. So,
okay.
I was, what we would have called a Jesus freak. Somebody that I was getting out of my car at the UT college campus back when they didn't have the mall, and there was a parking lot in front of the student union. I was getting ready to go to the library. It was dark out, and some dude in an army jacket and long hair and lots of zits and wire rim glasses. But the weird thing about him wasn't any of that. It was that he had this button that said, "Get smart, get saved."
Yeah.
And then on his belt, he had this leather pouch that had his very small RSV, as his sword, as he said. And we went through the Gospel of John, or 3rd chapter of Gospel of John, because I made the mistake of saying, well, where in the Bible does it say you got to be saved?
Right.
And so,
he told you, huh?
Yeah, he told me. I was raised Roman Catholic.
Okay.
I was a pretty moral guy, and I thought, people are allowed to go to heaven, then why not me? I thought I was better than most people from a moralistic standpoint.
Sure.
So,
comparatively speaking,
and I was.
Like most people do that, Yeah,
and that's that's why it's probably what prevents a lot of people from coming to Jesus is they don't. They think that they're a pretty decent person. It's like if there's a heaven, why not me? And that's kind of where I got.
You said Jesus freak. I got really into on Sermon Index back in the early 2000s. They were putting out Leonard Ravenhill and Keith Green video series in the mid 70s of them just having all these kids in their house, and someone had a recorder going, and it really reminded me when you say Jesus freak, because that's how Keith. I don't know if you're familiar with Keith Green.
Sure.
Yeah, how he came to the Lord, where he said he was just looking for a guru. He was like, he went to the Hindus and they said, oh yeah, Jesus is a good teacher. And he went to Muslims. They say, hey, he's a prophet and a good teacher. And he went over to Buddha and they say, hey, he could, he had some enlightenment. He goes, then I read the Bible and Jesus goes, oh no, I'm the only way. And he goes, well, I'll just make this guy my head guru then. Cause he seems, and, talks about how he would sit around. They got, they're smoking pot and reading the Bible, and obviously grew out of that and knew and realized that wasn't the right way. But just when you said Jesus freak, it was a really weird kind of culture too.
Sure.
I wasn't there to experience it, but someone like you who went through it, I bet it was interesting.
Yeah, we didn't have the pot, but I mean, these people were, they had a commune, and it was some people saw it as a cult, and I guess it did kind of maybe it was cultish in a sense. The leader who ended up hooking up with a teenager and all that.
Right.
So.
But
a pastor once told me that God rules with a crooked stick, and so he uses the foolishness of men's preaching, right? To reach the saints.
Wow.
So who knew? I mean, I was studying the guy that doing this had what he called the colored Bible. It was like, there's Bibles out there now that have color coding, for different themes, right?
Right.
And so, but they were big on the Gospel of John, and why not? The guy gave me a little pocket version of the Gospel of John, and I went to the library and read the entire Gospel of John that night.
Yeah.
I was excited.
That's awesome.
So I really turned a lot of people off.
Well, I mean, the truth does, right?
Right.
I mean, Christ did come to divide in a sense.
Yes, he did.
Right?
Right.
Unite and divide at the same time. Before we get into to kind of what we want to talk about tonight, let's get into our first beer and see what we think of it. Do you want to start with one of yours? Because now here's the way it works, guys. Randy brought 3. I brought 3. We might not even, if we get through them all, it's going to be because we're just testing them.
That's right.
Because some of these are high.
Yeah, some of them are high ABV. In fact, I brought all barrel-aged stuff. So
oh, geez.
I'm kind of a...
is that where your palate is? You like the barrel-aged
stuff? I like
stuff?
the big... I mean, I go for flavor. You know, I only have one, and so it's sort of... and even this, the Bourbon County that I bought, I almost have to share it because I'm not going to sit down and drink one of those.
Right.
So I thought maybe there's 3 people today, but we'll... You know, the thing is, we can, this stuff, the barrel-aged ones, you can cap it and drink the rest tomorrow. A little flat on a Imperial Stout's not a bad thing.
Not a bad thing, right? So which one should we start with?
I was thinking local. So
you want to go local?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If this is Ernest Brew Works, as I know the brewers, they're friends, they're good guys, Scott and Keefe, and they have a location in. Oh, you don't say where you're from?
No, you can't.
Okay.
It's kind of a running joke gag on
I see. Well, we're actually, it's a different state.
Yeah.
Local
we're
for me
Michigan.
is Ohio. Local for you is a different state. But they've got a couple locations, and this is a holiday brew that they call Spicewood.
Okay.
And this one's barrel aged, so it's a little higher ABV. I think it's 10.8%.
Okay.
And I have not ever had their barrel aged version though.
So what do you usually drink? Which one?
Well, I'm kind of really into Russian Imperial Stouts, and I don't even, Christmas beers aren't really necessarily something I gravitate toward.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of, but I've been like avoiding them for a few years. So it's been going to be fun tonight to.
So I'm kind of
more traditional.
I'm kind of the same way. I really only get into stouts, barrel aged stuff, scotches, like around fall and winter. I just can't do it when it's 89 degrees out and it.
Yeah, I mean it's certainly not a lawnmower beer, is what we call it.
Yeah. So
I drink. IPAs are kind of what I started with. I've been into craft beer a long time. So I had a buddy that was another Christian guy who turned me on to Belgians and some German beers, and so back when Sierra Nevada was brand new, and that's got to be 35, 40 years ago.
Yeah, they were kind of the only kid on the block.
Right, one of the first, right?
Yeah.
And so
let's crack it open.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's see what it's about.
Let's do it.
I'm interested to.
I'd pour yours first. But I think I'm going to pour mine and then pass you the can.
There you go. Yeah.
So, and we have these fancy tasting.
So, what's your take on? It's been going around the internet where people are saying, you know how you'll see someone pour to the side and kind of give it just a little bit ahead. And a lot of bartenders are saying, well, you're basically keeping that CO2, and then when you drink it, that's what bloats you. Pour it with a full head on it and let it settle. Where are you on this this internet controversy?
At least with the dark beers are usually a little less carbonated, so I'm definitely in favor of that. I do like, it's just like with wine. You know how you take a wine, you swirl it around, get a little aerated a little bit. So the problem is you don't want to do that with a highly carved IPA. It's just going to take forever to settle down.
Yeah.
But when it comes to big beers, dark beers, I have no problem with pouring them right straight in the glass. I wasn't sure how this was going to be carved. Yeah. It's a small glass, so I was being a little careful. But
I got to tell you, you're way fancier than I am here. It seems like barrel aged Spicewood.
But
heck, let's try it.
I'm a beer snob. I'm not gonna lie. I'm probably.
I like it.
I'm as snobbish about my beer as I'm about my theology.
All right, let's see. Oh, that is good.
It's very spicy. It's called Spicewood for a reason, but cinnamon, nutmeg. Kind of. I don't want to sound like a, a little tobacco and some leather, and I don't mean. Oh no,
I'm all about that.
But I mean, it's there's a lot in here.
Why am I tasting something like a little bit of cider or something like a sweetness on the end, almost like an applesauce or something? Is there something in there that would, or am I just nuts?
No, I mean there's some. It's Yeah, it's.
Man, that's good.
Yeah, it's a tasty beer. I mean, if you want something for for this style, it's solid, right? But remember, with your ABV, that extra grain, that extra sugar,
Okay.
it gives you flavor, right? It gives the yeast is working hard on that sugar, and with ABV is flavor. That's why low alcohol beers don't taste good, because they don't have that depth of flavor.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why I gravitate toward these big stouts. I just like the depth of flavor. Now, don't get me wrong. I love IPAs, and I think the whole New England thing has just been glorious. Love hazy
a lot
IPAs.
lot of good New England.
There's so much. I mean, I used to drive. I can remember driving to Indiana just to buy Zombie Dust, and now it's like who cares? And don't get me wrong, it's still an amazing beer, but it's just there's so much out there. There's so much good beer out there, even locally. Guys are making, but hazy IPAs take a little more work.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't. The brewers don't have the setup to hop during the cooling process, and some of these New England folk are just. And they just do such a great job. Hoof-Hearted down in around near Columbus.
Okay.
They're phenomenal as far as they got it down. Old Nation in Michigan. So you see the M43 and Boss Tweed, Full Earth. Great stuff.
That M43 for a while up here was like trying to get your hands on a gold brick.
Yeah, with that.
And you had to pre-order, and then you only getting so many per store.
I mean,
but it's good.
Yeah, it's the best hazy in Michigan, without question. Old Nation's.
They make a limited one with a little pineapple in it, too.
Yeah, they do. They make a strawberry M43, which is nice.
Which I'm not a fruity beer guy.
Yeah, just a hint.
But if you just give me just an underlying hint where I just get it in the aftertaste and it's not overpowering me and hit me in the face when, pretty good. So how often do you homebrew? Are you pretty regularly or no, not right now?
Not right now. I used to do it regularly. Ever since COVID, a buddy of mine, same way, he said, I think we found out with COVID that we brew to share. So I don't brew beer to just drink it myself.
Right.
I brew it to share, and I'm proud of my creation, and I like sharing it. And then when COVID hit, I thought I'd brew more, and I didn't. It was like I wasn't motivated because I knew I wasn't going to be sharing it with people, and I kind of got into a rut where I haven't been brewing.
Oh, I see that. So the opposite. Most people go, "Oh, you got all this time, start brewing." You're like, "Well, I don't have anyone to share it with."
Right. So now I keep saying, "Okay, I bought the ingredients and I never."
I think it's time to start it back up.
It is. I wanted to get a stout done before the holidays, but it didn't happen. But you like this beer then?
I do like it.
Yeah, it's solid.
Well, I like anything that's kind of complex, and once again, not trying to sound like a snob to anyone listening, but that's literally what that is, where you can kind of get 2 or 3 different directions on it when you drink it.
Right.
Instead of just something that's, I mean, that's why we're drinking it too. Is I want it to do something to my taste buds.
Sure. And this beer is kind of like almost like wassail meets barley wine. Almost like it definitely has that Christmassy. A lot of that cinnamon, nutmeg.
Yeah.
Not so much the molasses, which we're gonna when we get to this other one here, but
okay.
But that's not really a Christmas beer, but it comes out on Black Friday only, one day release. I mean, there's still some of it around. Used to be that it was snapped up really fast, and now there's just so much competition.
Yeah.
And Goose Island's just putting out so much of it.
Yeah.
That you can still go into a store and find it, which is nice.
Yeah. Well, we're to a point now to where you walk to a local beer store like that specializes. We have one here in Lambertville, and it's, Liquor Cabinet. Yeah, Jason Jindo, who's a friend of mine, who makes it a point to stock stuff that you just don't normally see. Mm-hmm. You become overwhelmed.
Absolutely.
You go, but it's nice to have those options. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll just go in there and, all right, I'll just get 3 that I've never even heard of, don't know what they are, and kind of rate them myself and have them here in the garage fridge to when someone comes over like you, they go, oh, let's try this one. But so when I talked to you a week or 2 ago about coming on, you said, oh, I think I got kind of what we want to talk about. And I think you said, you texted me the Misguided Calvinists. Is that
That's right.
So what did you mean by that? Because we kind of covered a little bit,
right.
Your salvation story a little bit there.
So in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, there's a lot. I was influenced by people like, Mike Horton, Reformation Magazine, White Horse Inn,
Yeah.
Alliance Confessing Evangelicals, because Jim Boyce and they're great guys. I mean, there's this distinction about law and gospel, right? And it seemed like, and I thought it seems like Luther was trying to swing the pendulum, this works righteousness thing, and he was swinging the pendulum away from works righteousness to a faith-based righteousness.
Sure.
And, he's famous for calling James an epistle of straw.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until recently when I researched that it wasn't that he was saying that it was straw like weak, but that it was not as meaty and as vital as, say, Romans and Galatians.
Yeah.
But I took that as to mean that, there maybe James could have done a better job.
Yeah, flimsy or not as important. Yeah,
right. And so this distinction, and then also there's a lordship salvation debate.
Sure.
Where, MacArthur writes a book, and then Zane Hodges writes his book, and I was back then I was kind of just eating it all up, and thinking, well, geez, both these guys. I mean, certainly Zane Hodges, I think, was really wrong.
Okay.
He wrote the book Absolutely Free, and he seemed like he was headed down a path of easy believism.
Yeah.
But MacArthur, I wasn't, wasn't sure about some. Maybe it was just me being picky, or wanting to be clever, But the idea of making Jesus your Lord just seemed a bit, I wasn't comfortable with the language.
Yeah.
He just is Lord, right?
Right.
But I think I fell into a trap where it was just faith alone, faith alone, faith alone, faith alone.
Yeah.
And I guess I went a while just.
Which, real quick, theologically, for salvation, we both believe justification through faith alone.
Absolutely. And it's not like I turned into an antinomian. That wasn't the case. But what I think, though, is that I when I went to Peru, for example, probably one of my favorite messages that I preached was called "What is the Gospel?"
Yeah.
And Paul tells Timothy, here's a trustworthy saying that deserves full acceptance: Jesus Christ came into the world to save sinners. And in Lima, I had to translate. I don't speak Spanish, so I'd have to say a phrase, and I'd say, the gospel can be summed up in 3 words, which ended up being a little funny because my interpreter looked at me and said, well, in Spanish it's 5 words, but it was Jesus saves sinners.
Yeah.
And so what happened is, I think I grew in my knowledge, but I didn't grow in obedience.
Yeah.
I wasn't pursuing personal holiness. I understood that personal holiness was important. There's that, I heard Dr. Packer teach at a Ligonier conference many years ago, and he quoted Robert Murray McShane, a great quote. He said, "My people's greatest need is my own personal holiness." And I believe that, but I do think for a while there, I was just, for even a decade, I was guilty of maybe coasting or being satisfied with my theological knowledge through my position was secure. I believed if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved.
Yeah.
Romans 10:9 and 10. And so I think I missed the idea that the gospel is a message of repentance.
Yeah.
It's not that I didn't believe it, but certain things happened to me, certain texts, that just started opening my eyes. And really the last 5, 6, 7 years, it's just really been, after all these years of studying Reformed theology and writing, and I wrote couple of the small group books, and then all
Sure.
the teaching that I've done.
Did you have anything to do with the Hebrews book that we're?
No,
Okay.
that was my year off. So, but
Okay.
although I don't know if I'm going to do next year, I'm probably finished Genesis.
Okay.
But should we? I didn't finish. Should we try another one? I don't know how long. Should we try another one?
Yeah, we could try another one. Which, to your point too, I think you could absolutely fall into that, especially in the Reformed camp, to where you kind of become very. Your hope and trust is put in not only your knowledge, but the books and the theology and the church history, and
Right.
and that can and believe me, that can make you feel close to God and to know Him.
Sure.
But like you're saying, and I think we're going to get to it in a second, there's a little more than that.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah. And I thought I'd talk about some of the things that sort of challenged me personally. So kind of where the rubber hit the road, kind of thing.
All right, so the second one here, let's see, which one are we going to go for? This one here is, let's just do this one. So, man, you brought some ones that were very specific and kind of, I don't know. I just feel like they're higher class than mine, but I wanted to go a little more.
That's
I just wanted to go a little more broad.
Actually,
for people.
I didn't expect you to. I wanted to be different. I didn't want to.
When I said bring a few beers, I go, I'm going to love whatever he brings because it's going to be nothing that I have on my shelf, and it's going to be fun. So this is Great Lakes Brewing Company in Michigan, probably one of the more popular ones.
No, that's in Ohio.
Or Ohio. I'm sorry. Yeah, Ohio.
I've been there.
You've been there.
Yeah.
Probably one of the more popular ones in Ohio, I would say, too, because
Actually,
you can...
It is.
Is it?
Believe it or not, I went to a tour there.
Okay. I feel like you can get this nationally.
Yes. Well, I don't know if nationally, but I can tell you that it's their number one seller.
Okay.
I think Dortmunder Gold, which is a lager, was the one that kind of got them going, and then Edmund Fitzgerald is their IPA. I'm sorry, is their porter.
Yep.
And then their IPA is, oh gosh, why is it escaping me? But anyway, the
Fitzgerald is
Commodore
pretty
Perry is the IPA. So I think the Edmund Fitzgerald is.
I think it's a great beer.
I think it's their best beer.
Yeah.
As a home brewer, I consider that to be the standard for a porter.
Yeah.
It's like if you want to, it's just like Bell's Two Hearted is a great standard for an IPA.
Yeah.
So what I would do is use that as a benchmark, and then you can go this way, that way, in terms of how you, what flavor profile. But I would say that Edmund Fitzgerald is solid, and this is their best seller, at least according to a person that works there.
So this one's 7.5, a little bit of spice and honey, still pretty big, but not crazy like a stout or a,
That's not wimpy. 7.5.
But let's pour it up and just see. And I would say if anyone's listening, this is one if you're outside of, because we have a lot of listeners,
Yeah, this one's might
in
be
the United
available.
States and Canada and Mexico and around the world. So this is one that you could probably get a little more if you wanted to. If you wanted to, you could probably get in a few more states in the United States.
It's a beautiful color.
Yeah.
Very, I don't know if people can see this, but it's a very, it's amber, nice head, just really lovely looking beer.
Yeah, let's take a sip and see.
It's excellent. Yeah.
I get some ginger on there too.
Yeah.
Some like,
you know what? I think I agree. I mean, yeah.
Now, see, that seems pretty darn smooth for 7.5.
It is.
Maybe it's because we just came off this one, which had a little heavier of a
right. The other
taste
one,
to it.
The other one was more spice and a little richer in flavor. This one is. This one was, boy, so nice and clear. This is what brewers, for a style like this is what they go for.
Is that what you're going for? Is the clarity on that too?
Yeah, on a beer like this, this is a nice looking beer, and like I said, it's their top seller for a reason.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like it.
Yeah, this one feels like a, kind of an in between. Because I have friends that will they're Pilsner only, IPA only.
Mm-hmm.
They'll stay away from lagers and stouts. Sometimes you get some of those beers where they kind of, they kind of get you into that world.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Like a gateway beer.
A gateway beer. That's the word I was looking for. I couldn't think of it. But I kind of like those when they kind of go, well, let's do something in the middle to where maybe one of my wife's favorites was a Founder's. Was it the porter? Was it the I think it's called Dirty Bastard.
Yeah. So that's a
because she is like punch me in the throat with all the flavors you can.
Yeah,
I'll drink half of it and I'm good.
very malty. It's an English ale, so very very malty. Not just sugary sweet, but more of a molasses kind of. More definitely darker in color. It has more roasted grains.
Yeah,
it's.
And to everyone out there, where I just said my wife's favorite beer, and then named this heavy beer, she drinks 2 of those in a year. Okay, that's.
It's funny that I heard on a podcast that the it's funny to say founders, the founders of Founders,
right?
They that beer is really what kind of righted their ship and got their, because they were pretty much not making it. And they said, you know what, we're going to brew what we like, and we're going to name it what we want to name it. We're going to defy convention, and they did that with the odd name and the nobody was really making a beer like that.
I don't think so.
I mean, it was probably
they were around.
They were probably around, but certainly not widely available.
I feel like they even probably made it a little more popular because they had some some status. When that came out, they'd been around a little bit.
Yes.
And they were known outside of Michigan. But you're absolutely right. The first time I had that, and it was years ago, you go, what is this? This is very different. Mm-hmm. And now, of course, you see, you can go to any beer store and see 50 of those.
Sure. And they have variation. They have variations on them.
And I love every one of them.
They're
I had someone complain to me, oh, there's too many of this. I go, why? Everyone Here's the thing. So I was talking to.
I love the variations more than the original.
Well, that's their twist. I talked to John Short from Short's Brewery. Mm-hmm. He came down here and he did a tap takeover, one of the local places.
Mustache?
Yep.
I met him.
Yeah,
good guy.
Yeah, he goes, I don't even really drink that much. I love making it. I love putting my twist on it, seeing what I'll taste it, obviously. But he goes, I'm not a big. I don't just go out and drink beer. I'll drink my new one that I made, see what it is, see how it. We got a local guy at Original Gravity, Brad Sanchez, same way. Mm-hmm. He loves brewing, and there's like an art to it.
Right.
Is what it is.
And the same way with Scott. Scott's not I mean, he wants to be profitable because he wants to make a living, but he just says, I like brewing beer.
Yeah. And it sounds like that's how kind of you are too. You're just into that art of it.
It's like I like creating. So I mean, I mean, whether it be woodworking or writing or it's all hobby. I used to collect baseball cards and stamps and coins, as little. And so it's sort of like I'm a hobby kind of guy, and so my hobbies have been theology and beer and music. But that could be another podcast altogether.
Right. Yeah. I think I'm in trouble because my 11-year-old daughter came up to me a couple weeks ago and she goes, Dad, do you know that they make record players now that also have speakers built in with Bluetooth? So I can play my Apple Music and I can play my Queen vinyl on. And I go, yes. She goes, that's all I want for Christmas. I'm going to start collecting vinyl. And I couldn't have been more scared and more proud at the same time. Right. Because we pride ourselves in, I grew up very, very legalistic to where I couldn't even listen to anything with drums. I played a Keith Green song for piano recital, and the youth pastor sat me down and the main pastor said, hey, that's devil music. That's progressive Christian contemporary music, which is a very odd signal to tell a 12-year-old when you're going, wait, you put this love in my heart? The Easter song?
My wife had a similar experience with her fundamentalist relatives from Indiana, and she played Twyla Paris and
they were like, what?
Her mom ran over there and ripped that cassette right out of that boombox.
Yeah. It was crazy. So I've taken a different approach, and we say, we sit down with our kids, and they'll listen to Bohemian Rhapsody, and we'll say, okay, let's talk about what was he struggling with? What's he going through? This is a depraved person who doesn't have the Lord, who's created art. We know that art was given to us by God to glorify Him. We own the arts, as I've said very many times on this podcast. I get really upset when Christians kind of ignore the arts. No, I think General Simpson said, does the chord and the fifth and the minor belong to Satan? Because if it does, we'll go down to hell, we'll plunder it, and we'll bring it back and for the glory of God. I write music, I brew beer, I create sculptures. I I do podcasts, all for the glory of God.
Right.
Art
Right.
belongs to us as Christians to glorify God,
Mhm.
not the other way around. The secular world doesn't get to have their entertainment. And no, we're taking it back for Christ, and we're glorifying him with it. And you can glorify him with it, like you said, woodworking or brewing a beer.
That's right.
Sorry, I got off on a tangent there. But
No, I'm cool with that.
let's get back to what you were saying. So faith alone,
Yeah.
we agree on that, justification through
Yeah,
faith alone. But
absolutely.
then maybe sometimes we slip into something as Reformed folk
Yeah,
and we go,
well, like,
what?
even using terms like, or expressions like, law and gospel, right? Or law and grace. Like there's some division here.
Yeah.
And I don't deny that there's, clearly law in the Bible and there's clearly gospel, right?
Yeah.
Right. But to separate them, and then I think I maybe fell into a trap where I thought that when Lutherans were talking about law and gospel, that law was, old covenant or commands, but it seems that when you read the scriptures that promises are always connected with commands.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Jesus said, repent and believe.
Yeah.
Right. So it wasn't, I was thinking about it today can you imagine Jesus says, now here's these tracts I want you guys to pass out. I want you to see if you can get them to say the sinner's prayer. So, and then they're in,
Right.
right. So,
I have a personal thing about the sinner's prayer. I think it's, I think it's done more harm than good probably in Western American churches, but
you see what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
And so, I preached, one of my favorite texts to preach from. I preached this in churches, in Peru and here in the States, in John 5. It's a wonderful story about the man, the invalid at the pool at Bethesda.
Yeah.
What I loved about that story, John's very picky about what miracles he puts in his gospel. Matthew, Mark, and Luke have lots of them. John only has 7.
Yeah.
And he picks this one. And Jesus goes up to the guy and he says, he's been an invalid for 37 years or something. And he says, do you want to be healed? That's a strange question to ask a cripple who's
Been
trying
trying
to get his foot in, but everybody keeps beating him in, right?
Yeah.
And so I thought that was a key verse in the passage. And I still think it may be the key verse. Do you want to be healed?
Unpack that a little bit. What do you think that means? Why would Christ ask, to the bystander, they're going, of course he wants to be healed. He's
Right.
trying to get in.
And the thing is, when he responded to Jesus, he didn't say, yes, heal me.
Yeah.
He didn't know who Jesus was.
Right.
And all he did was complain.
Yeah.
He said, when the waters get stirred up, there's nobody here to put me in, and I can't get up, because they believe there's this superstition or this thing that when an angel was stirring up the waters, and the first person to touch it when they got stirred up got healed. And so he was, I think that a lot of us are content to be in our dreadful condition. We don't even know. It's like what we were talking about before, where we think we're pretty good guys.
Right.
What good is the gospel if you don't think you need to be saved?
Yeah.
If you think that you're a pretty good guy and all you got to do is pull up your bootstraps and shine it up a little bit, and so I think that it was a fair question. Do you really want to be healed?
Yeah. And whether or not who he knew Jesus was or not, it is telling that he went right to an excuse instead of yes, I do want to be healed. Right? He didn't really answer
Right.
the question directly.
Right. It's not like he didn't say, "Well, what? You got some insight? Are you going to? Are
you going to help me out?
Are you going to help me out? Are you? And like none of that. Right? And so I focused my sermon on that, and I still think it's a really good. It's not like I should dismiss that, but what I did dismiss is, so after he heals him, and the religious leaders say, "Why are you carrying your mat on the Sabbath?" And they say, "Well, the dude that healed me said to." Well, who is this guy? I don't know. And he didn't even know. And so I loved it that it's a picture of God's sovereignty in our healing, right?
Right.
The guy didn't know who Jesus was. He didn't ask to be healed. Jesus found him and healed him.
Yeah.
That's exciting, right?
Right.
Jesus did it all.
Yeah.
Like he came to the guy, he found him, and even when he presented it, he said, "Do you want to be healed?" He didn't say, "Yes, heal me."
Yeah.
Like that's us, right? The picture of salvation isn't like Jesus throws out a life ring and you grab on. If Jesus threw out a life ring, I would swim the other way.
Right.
Right? In fact, I can't even swim.
Yeah. As the analogy goes, you're
As
probably the dead guy at the bottom of the ocean.
That's right. He just sees me down there and reaches out and picks me up.
Right.
So I focused on that in my preaching, that passage, and I think it's still all great themes, and it's not like I preached anything wrong.
Right.
But then after the religious leaders question him, then the dude runs into Jesus.
Okay.
And you know what Jesus tells him? He says, "Stop sinning. Stop sinning, or something worse might happen to you." That was what he told him. Stop sinning.
Yeah.
It's like, and I didn't even like, when I preached that passage, I just kind of like, that was like a little
footnote.
Footnote.
Yeah.
I talked about it. Move on.
Yeah.
Move on. What? Move on.
Yeah.
And it's just some, and then I'm teaching Romans, which I've done before, and for some reason, and my pastor, bless his heart, because he said, Randy, I want it to be you. I don't want to hear what Boyce thinks or what, Packer thinks or
Right.
whatever. I want it to be you.
We're also good at that too in the Reformed community, where we can parrot our guys pretty well,
right?
Instead of
absolutely,
right.
I mean, and I run to Calvin all the time, and
Sure.
and really, his comment. I mean, he's known for his institutes.
Oh, the institutes are.
But his commentaries are, they're the best.
Yeah.
I mean, he is lucid. He is pastoral. I mean, occasionally he rides his hobby horse against the Pope and
Right.
and such, but
Which I don't mind, but
yeah, but he's his commentaries are remarkable.
Yeah.
I could go on and on about those and what people have said about him. Arminius. Anyway, so off track there. Back to Romans.
sure.
So
you're coming out of that healing from Jesus, and then you get into Romans, and
just a lot.
What do you see?
It wasn't like all these things happen, bang, 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 but just over
but
time.
a building, yeah.
Yeah, they're building, and I've always in Romans, I get really excited about those odd numbered chapters.
Yeah.
1, 3, 5, 7, and 9.
9, yeah.
I mean, 1 kind of introduces it. 3, we're talking about our sin, and then 5, man, 5 just like he died for us while we were his enemies, and that just blows me away, right?
Yeah.
Blows me away.
Yeah.
And he also says he died for us at the right time.
Yeah.
That's exciting. And so I get really charged up about Romans 5, and then Romans 7, it's like I feel like some relief, because like, oh, Paul's going through this too, and he's
right.
a sinner, right?
Yeah, I got someone here with
Romans
me.
7 is really cool, and then now Romans 8. I mean, some people have called Romans 8 the greatest chapter in the Bible, and don't get me wrong, it's
chapter.
awesome, it's
Yeah.
awesome. But Romans 9 is what is why I'm a Calvinist, right? And not just Romans 9, but it's what just like John 3 was the impetus for me to consider Jesus.
Yeah.
Romans 9 was the impetus for me to consider that God's sovereign and to move away from the Arminian leanings of the predominant evangelicalism that I was exposed to.
Isn't that funny how if you don't, some people just stop at certain verses or certain chapters to where it's like John 3:16, that's all I need.
Right.
When
They
you
forget about
explore
verse
and you
17.
eat the Bible, right? Yeah, just go one more verse. All we want you to do is go one more verse.
Right.
But I've noticed that there's a fullness in the Bible to where you have to eat and consume all of it, all 66 books. We cannot put a microscope on one chapter, one book, one verse. I mean, right, correct hermeneutics as well too. But I've seen a lot of Christians who they stop at 3:16 and you go, oh, just please get to Romans 9 or get to John 6 or and you can see the fullness of what that 3:16 is.
Right. So I'm teaching Romans, and I'm thinking, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Those are kind of like my favorites, and Romans 8 is great, right? But I get to Romans 6.
Yeah.
And I'm all excited after 5 because, wow, just the right time. He died for me when I didn't even like him, and he died for me.
Yeah.
And in Romans 6, Paul says, all right, are we to continue in sin so that grace may
Grace
abound?
may abound, yeah.
Like, why do we still live in it?
Yeah.
And it just hit me.
Yeah.
Because am I really changing? Shouldn't I be, Martin Luther, to his credit, he started off the 95 Thesis when he said that Jesus says repent. He meant that the whole life, the whole life of a Christian, I'm butchering the quote, but that our life should be I'm redundant here, a life of repentance.
Yeah. The entire life, yeah.
Yeah, entire life, right,
Yeah.
right. Romans 6, 1 and 2 just hit me. It was like in a way that it never had. I kind of almost skipped over Romans 6.
Yeah.
Because I was so focused on my favorite chapters. And it was Romans 6 that just wow, God challenged me to change,
Sure.
pursue holiness, to be better, to stop sinning.
Yeah.
Stop sinning.
Yep.
It was the same message that Jesus said. Paul was saying, stop sinning. Why do you continue to live in it? Because did I really change? Yeah, I changed my attitudes a little bit, and I was a pretty good guy, and I think I was becoming moralistic in a way that I was railing against before.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. I struggle with 6 as well, too, because it's the one that I'm convicted by the most. Most people go, man, you read 9 and you feel like, well, why does God how can God find fault in us? Guess what? The answer is you don't get to ask God why. I'm fine with that. That makes sense. I get it. I don't get it. But you read 6 and you go, well, why do you keep sinning? What, so grace may abound? Because I've done that in my own personal life before.
Mm-hmm.
Well, grace abounds. Maybe I coddle this sin a little bit longer.
Sure. I
take
advantage
horrible
of God's grace.
Right. And so I totally get it to where that one I think is the challenging one. Right. Our Arminian friends might say 9's challenging, chapter 9. Mm-hmm. I get that. I read that the first time and I went, because my testimony is too, I tell everyone I was a closeted Calvinist for 9 years. I was taught, hey, those guys are weirdos and we don't really, don't go down that road. And I just started reading the Bible when the Lord said the sinner's prayer at 7, but got saved at 23. When I started reading the Bible, I went, well, this isn't anything of the tradition that I was taught growing up in both a very fundamentalist kind of Baptist, non-denominational, but it was fundamental Baptist,
sure.
Then swinging to a Bethel-like Pentecostal church. I had both extremes growing up until the time I was 16, about half of my time in each one. And I went, this is neither of these traditions. Mm-hmm. And then you stumble upon the doctrines of grace and you go, oh my goodness, where has this been my whole life?
Right.
This is the Bible,
mm-hmm.
right? So when I read chapter 9, it was, it made, by the grace of God, it made sense to my mind and my heart. And he obviously replaced my heart with stone to flesh. But when you read, so why do you keep on sinning if grace may abound? That one is tough.
Right.
That's why I also love James, though.
Yeah. And James, I'd always, but again, I used to discount James. I used to say, well, yeah, Ephesians 2, 8, and 9, God's prepared these works for me in advance, and I just wasn't convicted, but I've been seeing that, going back to what is the gospel, as I had a discussion with somebody about it. What is the gospel? And I kept, Jesus saves sinners.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to back down from that. It's not like I was wrong, but I think I was incomplete. That's my confession as a misguided Calvinist, is that I was forgetting about repentance.
Yeah.
That it's now we're saved by grace alone, through faith alone, through Christ alone. I'm not, I believe that with my whole heart, but we should, as John the Baptist said, we should bear fruit in keeping with repentance.
Yeah.
And what did Jesus say about the tree that doesn't bear fruit? He said, It's not a very happy ending.
No, not at all. Yeah.
Right? And so I'm being challenged. God's challenging me to bear fruit, to live a life of repentance, to like, McShane said, that personal holiness matters.
Yeah.
Instead of just paying lip service, I'd say the cool quote,
Sure.
then didn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And so I've been really convicted the last, like I said, half dozen years, and I've been thanking God more, praying more, meditating more. Now I read and I write, and so
No, that's so good. I mean, it's something. Well, let's go to another one here, and we'll talk about.
Let's so we have a
and we'll,
this is another Ohio one.
Okay.
And pardon the ears if I scraped up. This has got the fancy label.
Look at this. You got the
this
gold tinfoil on the top.
I've been to Thirsty Dog, and I've had their 12 Dogs of Christmas, but I've never had their barrel-aged 12 Dogs of Christmas. So
is that what this is?
That's what this is. This is fancy. I've never had it. So we're going to...
It's almost a shame that we're not going to be able to get to... here you go. Get to all those,
Yeah, probably not. Because
you're going to have to...
Yeah, I might have to save them for another time.
Cap them back up and bring them home. I don't want to waste them, but
this is I expect it to be good.
So what's the story on this? It's a barrel aged.
Yeah, it's a barrel aged Christmas with honey and spices, and it's probably I don't remember the percentage on it, but it's if you're going to barrel age a beer, it better at least be 10%. So
and where these guys out of here? Thirsty Dog
Akron,
Brewing.
I think.
Oh, I just got back from Akron last week.
I think so. If it's the place,
Brewed and bottled by Thirsty Dog, Akron, Ohio. Yeah.
So I went there once.
See what we got.
My daughter Rebecca did a co-op there.
Let's put it up here. So, 12 Dogs of Christmas.
Oh, I like it. I like it. In fact, I mean, no offense to my friend Scott, but I like it a little bit better than the Spicewood. It's not as spicy as Spicewood's. Definitely lives up to its name. It's Spicewood's a little more spicy. This one still has plenty of spice, but not
all right.
as
So
much.
see, you kind of like that less spice and that more kind of oaky barrel aged taste on it.
Yeah.
I kind of like the first one better.
Yeah.
This isn't bad. Don't get me wrong.
The first one is a little more complicated.
But I
more
do.
Complex, yeah.
But I love anything with a little bit of spice in it, though. I mean, it took me 4 years of drinking bourbon and then rye bourbon to then finally realize, I just like Scotch.
Well, that's a learned.
I was like, I just like the oakiness, the peatiness. I like those real sharp.
Next thing you know, you'll be drinking Irish whiskey.
Oh, well, I'm half Irish and half Polish.
Okay.
So I've had my fair share of Irish whiskey, which the running joke that I say is, I like to drink, but I can't find the bar. Half Irish.
Yeah.
So I totally understand what you're saying. And I think even within, once again, I want to preface this with saying, especially within the kind of Reformed Calvinistic community, I can see sometimes our trust being in knowledge. And now I don't say that because I'm saying don't learn, don't study, don't read. I'm not saying that.
We're doing a podcast.
And we're doing a I'm saying we can have that. Sometimes it takes the place of works. Sometimes it takes the place of actually fulfilling the great commandment. We go, well, I know that. I understand it. I've even been in the position to where I went, well, if I can teach someone that or explain it to them and they get this realization, well, that's kind of like that's my works. And he goes, no, I told you to love your enemy. I've told you to, you know what I mean? Sure. I've told you to, love one another as you love yourself. Like there's something to where sometimes I think, just like you said, you can get, and you need to be convicted by the Holy Spirit. We do, to where when we have a head knowledge of something, there's no evidence through works. Not that we're justified by works, right? We know what we're justified by.
But as James said,
it's a dead faith if there's no works attached.
Right.
Versus an alive faith. He makes it very clear. You show me a faith without works, and I'll show you a dead faith. I'll show you an alive faith with works. So, like Luther famously said, gospel of straw. I also say when I read Romans 9, 7, 8, and 9, I think it pairs quite nicely with James.
Mm-hmm.
Because it to me, then there's that balance there. yes, absolutely, God saves and God elects and God preserves
Mm-hmm.
and God does all those things. But also there's this crazy cool thing to where works are attached to a regenerated heart.
Right.
Right? Now, all kinds of books have been written on how those two work together, right?
It's what I kept going back to is Jesus' words. And so what I figured out, I figured out what actually people figured out before me, but what spoke to me is that Jesus saves us from our sins, but not just future. He saves us from our sins now.
Okay.
And I think I was more focused on what Christ accomplished for me for the not yet, not so much for the already, as theologians like to say, the already and the not yet.
Right.
So the already is that he saved me from my sins today.
Yeah.
That sin does not need to be my master. I have the Holy Spirit in me.
Yeah.
And I'm like Jesus. I talked about it in Sunday school last week. When Jesus told his disciples, his 12, that I need to go, because if I don't go, I can't send you the helper. But
right.
I need to leave. I would have been like Peter. I would say, "Are you kidding me? You heal people, you strengthen our faith, you walk on water, you confound
cast
the
out demons. Yeah.
Yeah, you're doing all this stuff, and you're teaching us. You're the man.
Yeah.
You're the Son of God, the Christ, and you think it's better to leave? Are you kidding me? You could get off that train right now. You ain't leaving, bro.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
How can that? I've always what did he? It'd be better if I leave. No, it wouldn't.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
But it was better because Jesus didn't lie to him.
Right.
He said, and look at what happened to their faith. Like when he was there, when he died, look at they all hid.
Yeah.
Right? And denied.
Yeah. And denied. Yeah.
It denied. It wasn't until he rose from the dead that they realized that, wow, right? But I'm struck by that. I have the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
He said it was better if he left, and so I have the Holy Spirit. I've been challenged to evaluate my life, to pursue change, and to be ever changing. Right? Because I'm never. And at the older I get, and I'm a lot older than you, I think. The older I get, the more I realize how terrible a sinner I am.
Yeah.
I paused because I was trying to think of the right way to phrase it. It's not that I'm more terrible than I was before. It's what I've noticed now is I notice my sinfulness, that I notice the quantity and quality of my sin more than before. Before, I think I used to ignore it, pass over it, not recognize it. The older I get, the more I realize I am sinning all the time. My thoughts, what I look at, how I process things, my impatience, my judging. I don't think I can go 60 seconds without sinning.
If you're being absolutely honest, most people can. But most people aren't that self-aware of it, or they're lying to themselves.
Well, I've become, apparently in my old age, I've become self-aware of my sin, and I realize I can sing, when Amazing Grace, when you think about who saved a wretch like me.
Yeah.
I identify with that now.
Yeah.
I think maybe before I never thought of myself as really a wretch.
Yeah.
Just maybe a guy who needed Jesus.
Yeah.
Who wanted to be saved. I grew up Roman Catholic, and my prayer, and it wasn't a bad prayer.
You grew up Roman Catholic and you didn't think you were a wretch?
Yeah.
You're one of the few that got out without that Catholic guilt.
Well,
I'm just playing with you.
No, you're totally fine. My problem is I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next, and so I'm not processing well. So I'm being, again, it's a sin in me, right? Right. I'm not a really good listener. No, I'm not. I mean,
I have to work on that myself too.
oh, I'm instead of listening, and I'm still busy thinking about what I'm going to say
Sure.
next.
Yeah.
You
No,
know,
I do that all the time.
so and then I forget. You know, so
Yeah.
I was yeah.
So you grew up Roman Catholic. What were you going to say
Oh, yeah, I
about
was
that?
gonna say
'Cause you were
about-
shifting.
I was
Said-
going to say you got me back on there. So I prayed as a child. I was an altar boy. Went to parochial school.
Okay.
Until high school. High school, I went to a public school, but I used to pray regularly. God, help me do the right thing. I just want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And I was even kind of known among my friends as being an idealist. Probably why I thought about, well, maybe I'll go to the Peace Corps. Maybe I'll be a pastor. Maybe I'll be a teacher. I just wanted to do the right thing. I want to help people. And I've always wanted to do the right thing. And the beauty of that is God used that prayer when I got saved, when that Jesus freak, that hippie, said, "Hey, look at the 3rd chapter of John. You must be born again." And I prayed in the front seat of my car. And I said, "God, if you're real, if this is real, if this is what you want me to do, I want to do the right thing."
Yeah.
You know, I want to be born again. Can you do what you got to do to me? And I said, and I even asked, I don't know if it's selfish, but I said, show me.
Yeah.
Can you please show me that this is real? And I really think that over time, he never spoke to me audibly.
Sure.
But it seemed that there were little moments, little things that happened to me where it was like, wow.
Yeah.
Like God did that.
Oh, sure. I've had
did
moments
that.
like that for sure.
You know, and so he answered my prayer. I felt like, and so he prepared me, right? He chose me before the foundations of the earth, so it's not surprising that I said a prayer that was, at least somewhat worthwhile.
Yeah.
Right? Even in my ignorance, I said, God, help me do the right thing.
Yeah.
And
My father famously growing up would tell me that. He would always his he would always say, just ask God. He's like in his personal life, I asked God to just reveal the truth to me, and allow me to do the right thing. Give me as much money as you want, as little money as you want, as much influence as little. Where I live, what I drive, doesn't matter. Just reveal your truth to me. And he said, the Lord has never let me down to not reveal the truth, because he's not a liar.
Mm-hmm.
And that always stuck with me. And it's kind of what you're saying too, Lord. Just and I think he's willing and able and wants to reveal his truth to us. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people either read the Bible or maybe not read the Bible and only go to church or attend a church, and they're not really too interested in the actual truth. They might be more interested in their version of who God is,
Sure,
or their traditions of their gathering, or or a million different things.
Sure.
Because I'll tell you what, you ask God to reveal truth to you, and it's usually going to cut the flesh.
That's right.
I've noticed.
And I don't
It usually starts with me,
and
the horrible person I am.
Right. And I don't think people really want that. I mean, I
Right.
think that
The majority of people.
I think a lot of people want to feel good about themselves, and our culture is telling us, like, you matter, right?
Right.
And so
Yeah.
that's sort of an inside joke if you live around here. Yeah, you matter. That's what we go to church to be comfortable, right?
Yeah.
I remember somebody saying that he was going to a new church. He was living out of a different town. He says, "Yeah, I've never been more comfortable at a church before." I'm like, that's a red flag,
Right.
in my mind. I mean, I didn't like call him out on it at the time, but that's a red flag, right?
I think the exact same way. I want my flesh to be hurt when I leave church.
Mm-hmm.
I want to confess. I want the word to cut my flesh, and want to walk out of there going, okay, I've been put in my place where I should be rightly. Now, of course, we can have sermons that uplift and glorify God and don't necessarily have to talk about sin or something. But I'm saying at the end of the day, if my flesh is evaluating the service, my flesh should be absolutely unhappy with everything that went on in that church service.
Right.
Because the flesh directly opposes Christ
Mm-hmm.
in everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I've had that, I'm comfortable. It's so entertaining. I feel so great. The worship is, sounds so good. And you're just going, oh, but you don't even, do you even really understand who God is, why we worship, why there's an ecclesiastical gathering of the brethren and it's commanded in Scripture.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying this from a place that I know everything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying, believe me, I've had some huge struggles in my life, even at my age, to get to this point and understand that.
Sure.
I'm an idiot. The Lord has to deal with me harshly on things sometimes.
I pray. One of my standard prayers is, Lord, please be gentle with me.
I know.
I'm afraid of His discipline.
Yeah.
It could really hurt.
Yeah, it's.
I'm a wuss. I tell him, I'm a wuss, Gord. I know you need to change me, but can you please be gentle about it?
I prayed for the discipline and then get mad that He disciplined me because I don't like it. And so He's like,
Right.
what do you expect? This is what you were, looking for. But yeah, absolutely. Oh man, good stuff. All right, let's get into our last one as we wrap this up. We'll just do 4 tonight.
Okay.
Is that okay?
So, yeah,
that way we're not
so
opening too many.
How about if
now,
does your wife have any interest at all?
What's that?
Would your wife have any interest at all after
In what?
we're done?
In that?
Stout?
Probably not tonight, but that one right there is kind of up her alley.
It's a beautiful beer. And,
you want to try? You want to do that one? I don't.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know if I really want to. I don't know. It's such a nice beer. I don't know if we should waste it on just a couple sips. But
but I mean, we can finish it off air.
Open it up. Let's go. Yeah, if we're only doing one more.
It's a 2019. This is.
First of all, hold that up for the camera. Yeah. Look how gorgeously that's packed.
Yeah, it's got a. Got an embossed the glass
love it.
there. Yeah, this is 2019. I have a lot of these. I try to buy several each year, and I have a lot in the basement. I live in an old 100-year-old house with a cold, damp basement, and I stick them in there.
Perfect.
And I've got probably close to 200 bottles of different stuff.
So are these like are they limited then?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're limited. They come out on Black Friday.
Well, thanks for bringing it to the podcast.
Sure. It's I like an excuse to open one, so right. I accumulate them faster than I drink them.
There you go.
So this is they have variants that are quite lovely. I mean I really fond of the vanilla variant that I had a few years ago.
And what's this one?
This is the regular one, which is, but this is the standard. So I talked about a benchmark, about Edmund Fitzgerald being or Bell's Two Hearted being a benchmark.
Yeah.
This is the imperial stout that I think all others should be judged by.
Okay.
It doesn't mean this is the best in the world, but it is one of the best beers I've ever had. Okay. And it is, there's other ones that are all equally phenomenal, but this is one of the ones it's one of the originals. And
are they pretty consistent throughout their line too?
Yes, they kind of blend them and so they are, but they're quite excellent. This one, as you'll see, is much darker.
Wow,
than
look
the
at
others.
that color.
Yeah.
Look at that.
And this is just a wonderful beer.
Oh my goodness,
I used to stand in line to get this. Now I don't have to stand in line anymore, which is kind of nice.
County brand stout. Mm.
And they consider it. They kind of bill themselves as like one of the original, maybe the original barrel aged stout.
Really?
But it's
how long have they been?
Quite a while. They got interestingly they bought out by Anheuser-Busch, but it hasn't affected the quality of these at all. I don't. Maybe they're letting Goose Island do their thing.
Sometimes they do. Sometimes they shut it down. Sometimes they fake it.
None of Goose Island's other offerings or anything I go out of my way for, but
this one
is worth it. Hey, cheers!
Cheers!
If we can reach here.
There we go.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here tonight, brother.
Yeah. My pleasure.
Oh, you're not lying.
I know. I just love this beer.
Isn't
it glorious?
This doesn't taste like
these are not like
any other ones that I've ever had.
Isn't it beautiful?
That aftertaste is something.
It's so you've got chocolate, coffee, black licorice, molasses.
I'm getting coffee big time.
Oh yeah, there's coffee for sure.
But not too much. I mean, not overpowering.
Yeah, it's just. And I mean,
wow!
It's not like I'm making this up, everybody. If
tastes like I just bit a cocoa, like a 80% cocoa bar. If you just let it sit in your mouth for a minute, it's like that real
It's
not like candy bar, like cocoa.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. It's definitely got the bitterness of 80%, like a dark chocolate, but it's there's enough sweetness there though that it does tease you. I don't know. I think it's just one of my all. If I had to pick my favorite beer of all time, this is in my top 3.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah,
I kind of want a medium rare steak right now.
Oh yeah, it's
ribeye.
It's this is a dessert beer. It's a sipper. Like I said, about 15% usually.
Yeah.
14.8. You know, it depends on the. I don't know what that label says.
I think it says 14.7 there.
14.7. Okay. Yeah, they usually vary a little bit.
Yeah. So what's really crazy? Did you see the documentary? It came out years ago, but it's probably 10 or 15 years old. And someone really needs to update it. But it was called Beer Wars.
No, I've not seen it.
It's I bet you 2008 maybe. So think about where craft beer was then. It was it'd been around a while, but in the mainstream, it was just kind of really exploding. Right on the bell curve, we're probably at the top now.
Right. You
but
go into Kroger,
2006, 7, 8, it was still, what are you drinking? I've never heard. What is that? It's a great documentary on. So the lady who made the documentary went into directing, but she was a vice president at Sam Adams.
Oh.
So she knew the owner and the brewer personally and kind of was, cut her teeth on those beers for about 8 or 10 years. So she makes this documentary, and it's just essentially the big 3 and all the crazy little tricks they do to get as much shelf space, buy up any little guy. Dogfish Head beer was featured in it, and this was back when he was
right.
He had one little tap room and wasn't even distributing. That's how long ago this was.
Yeah.
And he's featured in it. The guy, I don't know who the CEO of Sam Adams is now, but whoever it was back then was in it. And it's just a phenomenal. What it does is it instantly makes you hate InBev, Coors, and Miller. Right. It makes you just hate them. You're like, I don't even want to buy anything that's associated with them. Because they even give you the whole story of how they bought, I think Miller bought Leinenkugel, right? They bottle one beer a year in that plant to say that it's bottled there, and then they just took over manufacture of it and then basically made it their own thing.
Really?
They do sneaky stuff. So when you read it says, bottled in Milwaukee, whatever, at the Leinenkugel Brewery, 0.5% of your beers are bottled there. They're doing it somewhere else overseas. But anyway, this documentary, like I said, probably 2006, 7, 8, somewhere around there. It's on Netflix, I think, still. You would love it. Mm-hmm. Now, this would be going back in time. You'd go, it's totally different now. But I would love to see an updated version of that documentary now where we are, because basically the big 3 have, beer manufacturers or producers, distributors, whatever you call them. They're basically just into... They can't dam it at all. Dam up the flow of craft beers. Now they're into they get to a certain point and they'll buy you out, either shut you down, right?
Yeah, like, they're buying up. I mean, Founders sold. There's a lot of companies that Sam Adams is obviously really big, but a lot of them have sold out.
What's your personal thought on that? What is your personal thought on an entrepreneur starting a brand, starting a business, and then selling it? To, especially if it's in the area of something that's craft or art, because this is very divisive for some people. Why would you sell that?
That's a hard one, because it sort of reminds me of I was talking about the other day about Phil Collins, who was in Genesis.
Yeah.
And so when he was in Genesis, they were a prog rock band. They were kind of cool. Definitely not mainstream. Selling only by the pound was kind of a critically acclaimed record, and then he goes pop.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I have a friend who was really into a drummer who was really into prog rock and loved old Genesis and King Crimson and that stuff. And I said, I was getting on his case about Phil Collins being a sellout. And he said, your shelf life as a rock star is limited.
Sure.
He said, you got to make money when you can make it. And if someone's going to come to you and say, yeah, do this Disney thing, we'll pay you X amount of dollars. He said, how do you say no?
Yeah.
And so I have to be careful about judging, so if what's Short's first name? I can't remember it anymore.
John.
John Short.
Just John Short, yeah.
So if someone goes to John Short and says, "Hey, I'll give you $3 million for your outfit,"
Or yeah.
it's like, because Ballast Point out in California, the people that bought that offered them like 10 times market value.
Yeah.
How do you say no to that?
You almost can.
Yeah.
So here's my thought. When I was
so
17 or
it's
18.
hard for me to judge him, is what I'm saying. Hard for me to judge a guy who, if somebody makes you a fair offer and then you can walk away a rich man, I've asked that question to Scott, he says, I would do it as long as I could go back and start another brewery.
That was my point.
Because he says, I'd like to brew.
Yeah, just start some. Do the Papa John's version. That guy, I mean, he created Pizza Hut, sold it to Pepsi, went, I'll just go start Papa John's. I'll start making new pizza somewhere else under another name. When I was probably 16, 17, 18, if you told me one of my bands or one of my artists sold out, I would say, screw them, right? But what do I know? I'm 16, 17, 18. I don't know anything about the world. Sitting here today, absolutely. If one of these craft guys want to sell out to the big three, I don't even care if they shut them down. As long as they don't have a clause that says they can't go brew and slap a label on something else,
right.
Make that money, brother.
Right.
If you got, you know what I mean? You got to support your family, and maybe that propels the next, venture. I just know I have some guys my age, and they get in their 40s and 50s and even older, 60s, and they go, no, they can't sell. It's, it's an art. It's that starving artist mentality. And okay, I get it, and I have those friends.
Sure.
I have friends that are much better
I have
musicians than me, but don't know the first thing about business and will be starving their whole life. And I wish everyone could hear their music because they're amazing. But it's like you got to have a little bit of the entrepreneurial in you too, if you're in the arts.
Yeah, so it's hard for me to judge. Bottom line, I can't. I mean, Wicked Weed was a very famous North Carolina craft brewer.
Okay.
And they sold to one of the big boys.
How long ago was that? When were they?
Within the last
around?
5 years.
Okay.
And they were like one of the top craft brewers in North Carolina, which is saying a lot because, man, North Carolina is just loaded. They're like,
are they?
More than Michigan. They're
Wow.
just loaded with craft breweries. And but they said, hey, having that capital, having that money gives us a chance to do more stuff. I don't know if I believe it, but even so, I don't blame them. It's hard when someone says, I'll write a check. It's a lot of work to start a brewery and get it going, like any business, right? It's a lot of work, a lot of cleaning. And that's because I had friends that told me I should start a brewery, and I considered it. And I even started talking to people, and I started doing a little investigating, but it's hard work, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. It's like 90% cleaning and 10% paperwork.
Yeah.
I told Scott, I said, if I was like you and got people to do the lifting and the cleaning, maybe I wouldn't mind so much.
It's the same thing so I'm helping a client right now. We're opening a brewery in Dundee. So I'm helping him through the finance process, the lease process, the rezoning, all that kind of it. Which is funny. He goes, how much should I pay? He go, we'll work out the bar tab in perpetuity, in the future. And he kind of laughed, but makes great beer. Actually, just let me taste one of his New England IPAs recently. But the whole point of this is everyone has this idea of a brewery just like they do about a restaurant. Most people who want to own a restaurant just want to be the guy that goes around talking to hey, I'm glad to see you. Hey, we want to get this guy an entree, right? They want to be that guy. When in fact, if you own a restaurant, super thin profit margins, first of all, and I've helped some people open restaurants. It's insane. That's why I don't complain when I go to a restaurant and go, look at these prices. It's affected. Gas prices, food prices, distribution, right? And then secondly, you're usually scrubbing you're scrubbing down the fryers and you're sweeping, and you don't get to be the maitre d'. You don't get to be, and it's the same way with a brewery. You really have to get to a point in that business to where you get to be that guy that comes in and goes, oh yeah, I brewed something new and now I want to taste it and hang out with the customers. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that go in before that.
That's right. That's right. And I wasn't sure. I thought maybe I might not be young enough and wasn't confident I could get there fast enough, to be that guy. Because that's the guy I would want to be.
But on the flip side, if you have great beer, the people come.
Right.
If you have a great product, you can be in. Now it's not optimal. You can be in a horrible location, You can have, minimum staff.
Right.
You can have a building or a place to go that isn't that appeasing. But if you have how many times have you been to a restaurant that has great food, but there's nothing special on the presentation or the location, or, they don't have a big, bright, shiny sign? You go, but they have good food. I'll go back there. It's the same way in the brewery business.
Absolutely.
If you got a good beer, good atmosphere, you'll attract business to yourself, and maybe it takes a year or two.
Right.
But eventually you shouldn't be. If you're the brewer, you shouldn't be the one cleaning the tables and sweeping the floor. Not that it's beneath you. It's just everyone serves a different role in a business like that.
That's right. And I think what we were talking about before about...
So we're getting your commitment right here on the podcast. You're opening a brewery, right?
Well, we were talking about
You heard it here
before.
first.
I think the trend... yeah.
I just
Not true, honey.
He's like, no.
In case you're watching that. But I think the trend you're going to see, talk about the big boys buying up the little guys.
Yeah.
What you're going to see more of is the local breweries, I think, are going to hang on. And so it's kind of cool if we can. We didn't drink this one, but this is these guys are these are local inside the five.
Yeah. I just love the name of that one. Read the name of that. You got to read it slow because there's a couple entendres in there.
Oh yeah, that's funny.
It's the let me see.
Yeah.
Right? It's
Crama got run over.
Crama.
Yeah. Crama.
Got ran over by a rain beer.
Yeah. So they're they call that inside the five. The one of the guys that started that was a punter for a professional football team, I think down in Miami possibly.
Okay.
And so the punter ideally would punt the ball inside the 5-yard line. That's why I called it
Inside the five.
Inside the
See,
five.
I didn't know that.
That's where the name came from. And then he was got into craft brewing hobby when he was playing football, and shelf life for a football player isn't very long either.
No.
And so he opened up the brewery. I guess he made friends with the guys at Funky Buddha, which is probably Florida's best craft brewer. They're like the Three Floyds of Florida.
Crazy popular, crazy good beer.
Funky Buddha's top. Anything they make is good. Three Floyds, Funky Buddha, they don't do anything bad. I mean, Founders does a great job too. Right here in Michigan, Founders doesn't make a bad beer.
Yeah.
So, so inside the five's good. They do a good job.
I should say, just as we wrap this up here, as for an honorable mention, the Super Deluxe from Black Rocks. So this is about as far north as you can go in Michigan, in Marquette, in the Upper Peninsula. And I just love the fact that this technically it had to travel farther than a beer that I would get in southern Tennessee. It's about that far. It's about 9 hours away.
And it's too bad I didn't try it because this is the one beer.
Take it with you.
Out of all these, I don't know.
Take it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you'll take it with you tonight. I have a bunch of them.
Okay.
All right, so let's wrap it up here. We had some great beer, some great discussion. Absolutely loved what you brought tonight, Randy, just because it's so timely too for people listening. To have that balanced understanding of who God is and His Word.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. The beginning of wisdom is the fear of God. Mm-hmm. And I've always said, man, if we could just have more believers understand who God truly is in all His righteousness, holiness, justice, wrath, right? Instead of focusing on one character aspect of God, but understanding all those and how they all work together perfectly, immutable and all powerful. And what you said was actually speaking to me. So even if you guys didn't get anything out of this episode, which I'm sure you did, all you listeners, what you said tonight, Randy, really was uplifting and convicting in some way too. And I absolutely love you coming here to share that. You had any final words for us? You want to sum everything up in your 1 minute summation?
Jesus said, "If you love me, you'll obey my commands." And that's another thing, looking at Jesus' words. That's what's kind of convicting me. It's like that buttonholing, as they used to call it. It's if you love me, you'll obey my commands. Yeah. And so I think it's incumbent upon a believer to find out what those commands are, and say, Jesus, what do you want me to do? And we at Bob's funeral, one of his favorite hymns, maybe favorite, was "Who is on the Lord's Side," and it's just it's one
classic.
Of those, like a marching tune, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're singing it, and I'm like, who is on the Lord's side?
Yeah.
Who will serve the king?
Yeah.
And Jesus is saying, you're going to serve me? You're going to be part of my army? Are you if you love me, you'll obey my commands.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so good. Reminds me of the Johnny Cash song, When a Man Comes Around. There's a man coming around taking names, looking who to love and who to blame. So Randy, thank you so much for being on. Love you, brother. It was a great time just having a conversation with you. I'm sure this was beneficial as well to everyone listening. Guys, we appreciate you hanging in there with us. And if you're a craft beer drinker, go check out some of these too. I think you enlightened us a little bit on some beer knowledge as well, which is always helpful. And I'll link everything up here for you guys so you can go check those out. As always, we appreciate you checking out dmwpodcast.com. Make sure you leave us comments, suggestions, and make sure you leave us the funny worst Christmas story or worst Christmas gift you ever got. We're going to read it live here on the 22nd, and we're going to do some giveaways for you guys so we can get some t-shirts and some hats and some other stuff into your hands for Christmas. All right, guys, as always, we appreciate you. God bless. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Dead Men Walking Podcast for full video podcast episodes and clips, or email us at deadmenwalkingpodcast@gmail.com.